Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic Living Guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Hello and welcome. Is Nordic living for me? Or maybe is Nordic living for you, is perhaps the way I should be wording this. And that's a pretty open-ended question, isn't it? What is it? But I'm guessing that many people, and you're probably amongst them, do wonder. And they wonder that when they start to delve a little bit deeper into Nordic living, beyond simply scratching the surface, or perhaps reading hygge or lagom. And although we don't need to totally immerse ourselves in any kind of lifestyle unless we want to, it's a question that we often ask ourselves, especially when we start those steps. Is it for me? Am I going to like it? Is it right for me? Do I even want to dabble around the edges? Or is it so incredibly right that I want to embrace it in every aspect of my life? And of course, everything in between. So let's talk about Nordic living. First, I will say that Nordic living is not hygge. I've said this before, haven't I? Hygge is that famous Danish expression that conveys a level of coziness and happiness from the simple pleasures in life. And it helps us appreciate them all the more without having to strive for more. That's very Nordic. However, in recent times, it's been used to make people feel like they're doing it wrong. And that there is a right way of living a hygge life. And I see this a lot, not in my own Facebook group, I have to say, but in other groups and social media. What is it? How do I do it? Am I doing it right? Is there a right way of doing it? And there are hygge courses and countless hygge books, which in my opinion only fuel that feeling of uncomfortable inadequacy that is very un-Nordic. And it's so far removed from the ideal of hygge. But we know that that's not the way we want to feel. We don't want to feel like we're inadequate. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? We're trying to get away from that. But Nordic living has a bit more depth to it. It's a way of life, and it's a way of seeing things that is not always easy, and it's the way that people live here. In my own journey to embrace Nordic living, there have been times when I felt a resistance to it, certain aspects of it, I have to say, and there have been things that have been hard to do. Probably made harder by the fact that I live in Norway and I can't escape it, and I can't put it to one side. I'm here, I'm immersed in it, it's all around me. I'm not getting away. But in the long term, it's had a profound and long-lasting positive effect on my life and the way I view things. And that's why I'm always telling you about it. And I'm teaching it. I want people to know. I want people to bring it into their lives. It's healthy and it will make life better. It's made my life better. I can show you how to do it. But if you're looking for some of these things and wondering if Nordic living is right for you, I've got a few things to point you in the right direction. If you say yes to these, then yeah, you're there. You're looking for a simpler life. Nordic living tends to lean more towards the simpler aspects of life and enjoying the simple pleasures. Less consumerism. I think that actually there are a few people here in Norway especially who might argue that. These would be Norwegians, not foreigners, I have to say, and not people looking in from the outside. There is a bit of a battle going on here at the moment with consumerism. The people are trying to get away from it, but it's got a grip and particularly on the younger generations, and it concerns lots of us. But when you start to focus on simple things and what the natural world has to offer, then you tend to think less about what to buy next. And that is the traditional way of Nordic living. It can make us stronger in the face of all the consumerism that we see every day. It really can. It can help us get away from it. We can step away from it. You want a closer connection to nature. I think we all do, don't we, really deep down? And we know what benefits it brings us. But we all know how much people in the Nordics value nature. It's a really big thing. And we know how it benefits us both mentally and physically. And if you don't know that, then it does. Just try getting outside and stand outside amongst some trees or in a field if you can, or even in the park, or even just go and touch a tree and just stand there for a few minutes. It brings a level of calm and it slows you down a little bit. But you don't have to live in a Nordic country to benefit from that. You can have that at home. But if you're striving that, then you're looking for a Nordic life. You want to live more seasonally. There's no escaping the seasons when you live in the Nordics. Even if you live in Denmark, which is relatively warm compared to northern Sweden, for example, but you simply can't escape the seasons. They are there, and there's very much a start of one and the end of another. And it's especially noticeable between the summer and the winter, where the summers are nice and warm. We get up to 30 degrees centigrade and it's sunny and it's lovely, it's relatively dry. And the winters are harsh and cold. Really cold. We're talking 60-degree difference. We're down to minus 25, even in the south. And a lot of snow. If we have a winter without snow in Norway, Sweden, Finland, then that's, something strange. I wouldn't even say it's unusual. I would say there's something very odd going on there. Every season has its beauty, and that's what you learn. And it's worth making the most of them all. Being accepting of other ways of life. This is so important. I can't stress this enough. And all the Nordic countries pride themselves on their acceptance of every other way of life, every other religion, every other life choice. And this stems from the famous Jante's Law, which I'll explain in a bit more depth in another podcast, because otherwise I'll be going on for about another half an hour here. But it's a very important part of Nordic living. And if that's something that you want to have in your life, then you're striving for that. You're striving for some Nordic living, something that people just have as a way of life, as something that is accepted and would not be tolerated. That lack of tolerance is just not put up with here. Eating more healthily. It's not always easy to find a wide variety of products in Nordic supermarkets, especially in the winter. I'm sure you can imagine, things are not growing really, unless they're growing in hot houses, but they're really not growing in the winter. And because of this, we usually eat seasonally and therefore more healthily. Throughout the summer, we're programmed almost to eat this seasonal food. Everybody knows when things are going to be coming into season, when things are at their best. And that's very much part of the Nordic diet. But there are particular Nordic habits too that help us eat more healthily every day. Things like traditional food days or celebratory food days, like Norway's National Food Day, which is Fårikål. And it's a stew of lamb and cabbage. And it's literally just those two things with some peppercorns and some water cooked together. But it's September, and it is when lamb and cabbage are both at their prime. Things like the annual berry tour, the berry trip, where everybody goes out. It's not a specific day. This sounds like it's organised over the whole of Scandinavia. I must stress that it's not. It's something that people just do spontaneously, and they do it when the berries are ripe. And it can go on for a couple of weeks, depending on what you're picking. If you're picking raspberries, they start early. If you're picking lingonberries, they finish a bit later. But everything in between. And it's something that everybody does. And everybody knows that the berries are ripe and they're at their best. And maybe you gorge yourself a bit, especially the little ones. But it's healthy. And it's brilliant and it's seasonal. Understanding that more is not always better. That's quite a difficult one to grasp sometimes, isn't it? Especially if we're in this culture of what we were talking about, consumerism, where we are constantly told that we should have more, that it should be better than next door or better than somebody else, or we're striving to live a life like some of these Instagrammers. But more is not always better. And when you really deeply understand that, then it's a wonderful release. And you have that feeling of, oh my goodness, I really don't need to be like that. I can be who I want and it doesn't have to be more. In Sweden, it's called lagom, or just enough. Not too much, but not too little. So how many of these things speak to you? If they do, then Nordic Living is right for you. You don't need to ask that question anymore. It is. Or even if just a few spark your interest, it's something that's worth exploring, isn't it? Why not have a dabble? Any lifestyle change can be embraced as fully or as little as you choose. The choice is entirely ours. We don't have to be dictated to by somebody else. You can make that choice. We can make these huge sweeping changes, or we can take tiny little steps. But it's personal and it's tailored to our own lives now. So if you've been wondering, is Nordic Living for you? And you've answered some of these questions, yes, then it is. And I hope you join me and explore a little bit more. Go to my blog and have a little look, or come and join my Facebook group, Living a Nordic Life. I'd love to see you there. And I will see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.